What is up, guys? Welcome back to the Dead Route YouTube channel. We're back with another Dynasty Sells edition. So we haven't done one of these in a while because, I don't like doing just buy sells every week. I think that, everybody's a sell and everybody's a buy in the format, and especially with sells. So one thing that we don't do here is I'm not going to sit here and just tell you 3 guys to sell, here's why, and go, right? So what I'm going to talk about is maybe you can sell a player even if you're a contender and get production back and collect assets and still go try to win your league, right? We're not talking just rebuilding sells. We're not talking, just completely, hey, retool, we're going to reshuffle our teams. We're talking about, hey, if you're a contender, maybe you have a couple of these guys, you could still go find production somewhere and get that production, but also collect assets so that you're also reloading, right? Not rebuilding, you're retooling. I am a proponent in Dynasty of never just tearing it down. I do like the idea of just retooling, rebuilding every year, kind of like what the Steelers do, but actually they have a better quarterback at the Superflex spot, right? So sorry, I had to take a shot at Kenny Pickett there, but I like that idea. So I'm going to be diving into what that looks like. We're going to be talking about 3 players in Dynasty right now that you might want to sell, giving you context, real life trades out there, and just kind of analysis of why I would do it. So hit that like and subscribe button. I'll catch you guys on the other side. Let's get into it, and let's talk a little Tony Pollard. So we're going to start with Tony Pollard here. Everybody knows, if they follow this channel, I'm a Dallas fan. Tony Pollard to me is an interesting case for Dynasty. He's 26. What is the big thing for me? The one thing I look at when we talk about Dynasty, and we do a Football Guys Dynasty show, and we talk about this all the time: uncertainty. So where is the uncertainty at? Tony Pollard has a lot of it, right? 1-year contract. What does Dallas's offense look like next year? Will that coaching staff be there? Is he on another team? Has he proven to teams that he can be an elite, running back asset? They're not paying running backs anymore. Where is he going to go? So to me, first of all, with Tony Pollard, there's so much uncertainty with him. Even if I'm a contender, I may be looking to pivot off of him to find that production somewhere. Now, I do know on the flip side, where his value comes from is probably his targets in his receiving game, right? Last week against when we saw against the Chargers, the reason why he was good, he had 7 targets, 80 yards. He had that touchdown that he got, or he should have had a touchdown, but he got caught from behind. So he's efficient there, right? 29 targets, 25 receptions. So that's looked good. From a rushing standpoint, he scored those first 2 touchdowns the first week. But after that, we haven't seen him get in the end zone. So he's a borderline kind of like running back 15 to 20 in that range. So is there production out there that maybe you can get plus assets, right? That's how you look at Tony Pollard. I do think that if you're a contender, I understand holding on to him if he's like your running back 3 or 4 and you're like, hey, I just like his upside. I think they have a fun stretch down the stretch of the season. It's tough though. I mean, at Buffalo, at Miami versus Detroit is not the easiest kind of fantasy playoff kind of matchups there. So that's something to know as we kind of get into the season, as we look ahead, if you have him on a contender. But here's what he's going for. So when we're talking about, what is his value? Right now at Keep Trade Cut, he's running back 10. At Football Guys, running back 10. TDR, running back 10. As far as trades, this first one is interesting to me. So all of our trades here on the channel are 12-team Superflex PPR. Tony Pollard for Isaiah Pacheco, a 24-second and a 25-second. So this is what I'm talking about when I am talking about maybe you can ship Pollard for Isaiah Pacheco, right? And you're looking at Isaiah Pacheco, who has become a legitimate running back 2, maybe high end or low end running back 1, right? When you're looking at his PPR finishes the last 4 weeks, 6, 14, 14, and 10. He's looked good. He's getting in the red zone. He's seeing those targets now. He had 23 targets, so he's pushing Tony Pollard there. From a ground perspective, he's getting touches, right? He had 13 carries this last game, 16, 16, 20, 15, 12. And I think from, Pacheco is running style in terms of what he can do in the red zone is different from Pollard. I think they believe that he can go in the red zone, and we're going to see those red zone touches. So I like that. Now, then you get 2 seconds. So you're talking about a guy right now who is probably ahead of Tony Pollard right now in terms of fantasy rank, points per game, everything that we like, plus the seconds. That's kind of how you can retool your league and go after it, right? If I'm rebuilding, I don't hate this deal either, because I do think Isaiah Pacheco is going to have more value the next 2 years. But again, the running back position is so volatile. You still have those seconds, right? So you can kind of ship them and decide where you want to do with them. I think it's an interesting deal. And I think that's one of those things where contenders can maybe move off of Pollard, but still contend with Pacheco. Now, the next one, Tony Pollard, Tyler Lockett for Cooper Kupp. That's essentially, I'm going to go get a guy who I think can finish as a top 5 wide receiver and push me down the stretch of the season, where I'm worried about Lockett, after this season, and then Pollard after this season. But I can go get Cooper Kupp, and maybe for 2 years, I can ride that production out. Then you have Nico Collins and Tony Pollard for Amon-Ra St. Brown. This did happen in a league. I would smash the Amon-Ra St. Brown side, right? Give me that top 10 elite dynasty asset wide receiver over Nico Collins and Tony Pollard, who are huge question marks. I like them, but they're not Amon-Ra's category. So that's an area to kind of go look to see if you maybe get Amon-Ra. Now, the next guy is Stephon Diggs. Now, this is not a knock against Diggs. I understand when you're looking at Diggs and what he's done this year, points per game, he's a top 5 wide receiver. He has a over 30% target share. His air yard share is a top 10. When you're looking at his yards per route run, I think it's top 5. So everything he's done that, you've seen it. I think he leads the team, leads 6th in the NFL in red zone targets. So he's had that. This year on the season, when you're looking at PPR, I mean, he has 78 targets already, 55 catches, 678 yards. So he is right there. He's a top 12 guy outside of 1 week, and that's what you're getting from him. But he is 29. And will he be back next year in this Buffalo offense? There's a lot of question marks about this Buffalo team right now. That offense is in flux. That defense, what is that going to look like next year? How's this team going to play out? Like right now, he's tied to Josh Allen, but what happens if he isn't, right? What is that going to look like? Now, we've seen Keenan Allen and we've seen some of these other guys step up. And Keenan Allen's kind of a good example because he's older, but he is also tied to Justin Herbert. We don't necessarily know where Stephon Diggs is going to go. And so I think that raises some red flags in terms of him as a long-term dynasty asset. But I understand if you're a contender and you want to hold on to him, there's no shame in that because I do think he's going to have production for 2 years. But if you're not a contender, here's what these deals are going for. And so when we think of, keep trade cut, wide receiver 10, wide receiver 11, football guys, wide receiver 15 and TDR, Stephon Diggs for CeeDee Lamb and Roschon Johnson. I don't mind if I'm a rebuilding team. I don't mind going after CeeDee Lamb right now. I know in this offense, he hasn't been amazing, but I talked about it preseason. I was worried about him in this offense because I didn't know if the targets were going to be there. We've seen him pick up a little bit. I do like CeeDee Lamb. If you can get kind of an asset plus, that's not a bad get. Then Stephon Diggs for T. Higgins in a second. Again, this is some risk on both sides. T. Higgins, and then you had the insulated risk with the second on that side for Stephon Diggs. I understand maybe giving up Higgins in a second if you're going for it. The thing with this deal, this is one of those deals that we see next year at this time, and we're like, wow, T. Higgins got smashed because T. Higgins is now the wide receiver 1 on another roster. And I think that's where the interesting play on this one is. I like it for both sides. I think both sides would work well. If you wanted to maybe get rid of Diggs and get T. Higgins, I would love to get a first, but that's going to be incredibly difficult with that side. And then we have Diggs and Brian Robinson and DK Metcalf. And this is one of those ones where you're maybe selling low on Diggs, and I wouldn't do that. It depends on what you think of DK Metcalf. I see him as just a wide receiver 2 that struggles in PPR because I don't know if he's going to get as many targets as these guys are going to get. And I think that's why Metcalf in half PPR or standard has a little bit more value. But I still lean Diggs in this deal. But this is one of those ones I wanted to kind of show you for maybe selling a little too low. Brian Robinson, buying a replaceable running back. I'm not for that with Diggs. Maybe DK and something back, right? Maybe a pick, maybe do that second. Or you get a better asset coming back to you. I would do that deal, but that just gives you kind of context of what he's going for. And then my last guy is Austin Eckler. And it's not that I don't like Austin Eckler. He's 28. And we had this conversation on the Dynasty show. And when we were kind of going over him, what is his long-term value? I argued it could be Kamara because of his pass catching. And he's not catching as many passes so far through 3 games that he had last year because of this offense and Kellen Moore. But who knows if this offense and the coaching staff is going to be the same. Maybe we do find him in himself in an offense where he does have long-term passing catching back, in terms of what he can be like Kamara, right? And he does hold that more value. So I think he's kind of a tweener right now. I think guys like him. I think that, when we're looking at what he did the first week where he was, running back 2, that's the value of him in terms of his efficiency on the ground. He's still, I don't think he's all the way healthy. So if he comes back, you could, get more of it, get more value for him. Right now, he's all over the board in values. Running back 11 on Cube Trade Cut, running back 8 football guys, running back 14 here at TDR. His deals are all over the place. I say Austin Eckler is the most league-dependent asset I know right now. Austin Eckler for a tank down on a first. I like the first. I hate just selling for Tank Dell, right? Like, I think I'd like to get something else for him. But if you can get a first right now, it's really incredibly difficult to find a first for Austin Eckler. So if you could try to get an asset that you like, if you believe in Tank, go get it. But that's one I struggle with. Eckler for Devonta Smith in the third, though. If I could get Devonta Smith, I'm probably smashing this because I think from that wide receiver perspective, building to that wide receiver spot is good in Dynasty, and I think there's value there. And then we have Austin Eckler in a second for Jahmyr Gibbs. If this happened, now this did happen in a league. If you can get this for Gibbs, if someone's really down on Gibbs, I know he had a big game this last week, but if people are still down and maybe a contender is like, no, I need to go get Eckler, and I think Eckler's going to have a good part at the end of the season, or maybe Eckler comes on strong and you can go grab Gibbs, that's a great way to kind of retool, rebuild a little bit. You're still giving up a second, but you get Gibbs where you feel like, hey, this is kind of a contender and like a rebuilder kind of deal where it could be either way, right? Or just contender straight up. And who do you believe in the most? Let's roll. And I think those are the deals that are the most fun, but they're definitely the most nerve wracking. So those are three guys just in context that I would think about selling based on what their price is. But you could hold if you're a contender. I get that part of it, but I was just trying to give you guys context of like, hey, even though you have these guys, doesn't necessarily mean that you have to write them out. There are deals out there that can be had where you collect value, like that Tony Pollard deal that I showed you, and still got to, try to go win your league. So hope this helps. Drop it in the comments if you have any trade questions or trade help. You can always find me there. Join our Discord where we talk about that all the time. So appreciate you guys. I'll check you guys on the next episode.